Hi and welcome to Ivy English. I'm Angela.
And I'm Wesley.
Today it is the 15th of November. We're on page 42 of the magazine. And today we're talking about the rose window of medieval Europe.
好，所以我们今天的中文标题是璀璨的玫瑰窗，光影映射下的宗教艺术 The Rose Window 就是我们讲的玫瑰窗。然后这个 Medieval Europe 就是中世纪的欧洲。
Yeah, because medi is just middle.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know what the evil part means from the Latin. Do you know the Latin of that?
No?
No? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be a mystery for you guys. A mystery. You can look this up. I bet you can Google it even.
Yeah, 其实这个字典一查就知道了。Yeah.
So let's read the article. If you've ever seen detailed photographs of Paris's Notre Dame Cathedral, you may have noticed a striking feature of the building. Large, circular windows, divided by intricately arranged stonework, radiating out from a central point like flower petals. The stonework encases colorful stained glass window panes full of Catholic icons and symbolism. Called a rose window, this adornment can be found in cathedrals across Europe, although the style was most popular in France. The rose window is a key element of Gothic architecture, a highly ornate style of architecture popular from Europe's high Middle Ages to the late Middle Ages, roughly 11th century to 15th century. During that era, most artistic expression was primarily reserved for religious artwork and buildings, and the rose window was no exception. The ground plan of medieval European cathedrals is usually laid out in the shape of a cross, with rose windows often incorporated into the facades and transepts of the building. Notre Dame has several rose windows facing north, south, and west, with the south window being the most famous and measuring 13 meters in diameter. The windows are all illuminated by natural light throughout the day, casting colorful light onto the walls and floor of the cathedral. Despite their association with Gothic churches and Catholicism, historians believe that rose windows were inspired by early architectural styles from the Roman Empire and various Islamic empires that came afterward. Indeed, intricate window designs similar to rose windows appeared in the Middle East some 500 years before the construction of Notre Dame began. At the time, Islamic and Christian empires often fought each other. Nonetheless, the popularity of the rose window demonstrates that artistic expression can transcend time, culture, and religion. Okay, you guys might remember Paris's Notre Dame Cathedral because it famously burned a couple of years ago. And so you might have seen a lot of photographs of it at that time. But if you've ever seen detailed photographs of it, you may have noticed a striking feature. Striking means particularly noticeable. What they have was large circular windows. Okay, this is a very complex sentence because it's talking about architecture. And anytime you're trying to describe physical space or abstract things like architecture, it gets long and complicated. So they have large circular windows. So the window is a circle. And these windows are divided by intricately arranged stonework. So the stonework is the bars that are in the window. And these bars are radiating out from a central point. So that means they're going from the middle to the edges of the circle. And that makes it look like flower petals because you're making like a series of wedge shapes that are all around the edge. And then each wedge shape ends also in a curve.
好，所以呢，这个一开始他说 if you've ever seen 好，你如果看过 detailed photographs 就是细节很清楚的详细的照片，这个巴黎的这个圣母院大教堂的详细的照片，你如果曾经看过很详细的这个细部照片的话， you may have noticed 你也许会注意到，也许曾经注意到 a striking feature 一个很显目的 feature 特征， striking 在这里就是醒目的或者显目的，所以 一个很醒目的特征，就是这个建筑有一个很醒目的特征是什么呢？冒号告诉你，就是 large 很大的，而且是 circular windows 圆形的环状的窗户。好 divided by 那这些窗户是被什么所区隔开来呢？是由 intricately 就是很错综复杂很繁复的 arranged 很繁复的安排的这样的一种 stonework 可以说是石做就用石头做出来的东西或者石雕之类的work made of stone 的意思。好，所以这个 stonework 怎么样呢？是 radiating 就是向外蔓延 out 往外蔓延，像散射出去 from a central point 从一个中心点散射出去。那散射的样子看起来就好像是个 flower 一个花的 petals 花瓣一样，所以它们好像花瓣一样，花瓣也是从花的中心向外 radiate 向外散射，那这些也是一样。
The stonework encases colorful stained glass window panes full of Catholic icons and symbolism. So the stonework is the framework in stone, and it encases, it holds it together. It is the case for it. And what does it hold together? The stained glass window panes. And these window panes are themselves held together by strips of lead. So it's glass held by strips of lead encased in a stone frame that's encased in a stone wall. And these colorful glass window panes are full of Catholic icons and symbolism.
OK, 那这些 stonework 怎么样呢？ case 是个箱子盒子， in 就是把它放进去，所以 encase 就是把它包住，好像放到盒子里面去一样，就是 enclose 的意思。 to enclose in as 或者是 or as if in a case， 这样盒子一样，把它放到盒子里面那种感觉，就把它包覆住了。所以这些石座呢，会把 colorful 一些五彩缤纷五颜六色的 stained glass window panes 一些彩色玻璃，就是 stained glass 的这种 window panes 就是这个窗户一片一片那个玻璃，所以换句话说就是他们这个 stonework 会把这些彩色的或者五颜六色的彩色玻璃把它包覆住。那 full of 是指这些 window panes， 那这些玻璃呢上面充满了天主教的 icons 圣像，还有呢 symbolism 天主教的象征。
So this whole thing is called a rose window because rose is a very popular name for flowers and they tend to be round, and this window is round and kind of flower shaped. So these rose windows, this adornment, an adornment is like a decoration. It can be found in cathedrals across Europe. It's a very common thing that you will see in cathedrals. Although the style was most popular in France, you're most likely to see it in French cathedrals.
好，所以一开始一个分词构句 called 它被称为 a rose window 一个玫瑰窗，这样的一种这主词在这里 this adornment 这一个装饰或者装饰品呢 can be found 可以被看到可以被找到在 cathedrals 就是这个天主教的大教堂 across Europe 全欧洲都看得到。虽然说呢 the style 就是这种风格 was most popular in France 是在法国最流行，所以在法国最多。
Let me just quick talk about the difference between a cathedral and a church. A church is any Christian place of worship. But a cathedral is specifically the church belonging to the bishop. And the bishop, controls a certain area, a territory. They take care of this territory for the church. And so the seat of the bishop is the cathedral. So it's a special church for the bishop.
这 cathedral 我们刚刚讲大教堂，那其实所谓大教堂的意思不只是它建筑要够大，而且是里面是有主教的，它是主教所在的一个大教堂，所以那个才叫做 cathedral。
So the rose window is a key element of Gothic architecture. So it happens most often in Gothic architecture, and it's one of the ways that you know you're in a Gothic building, although not exclusively, to be honest. Gothic is a highly ornate style of architecture, popular from Europe's High Middle Ages to the Late Middle Ages, and the styles change over the centuries, but it roughly encompasses the 11th century to the 15th century.
所以呢，这个地方我们讲到说，这种玫瑰窗呢是个 a key element of Gothic architecture， 所以它是这个哥德式建筑的一个 关键性的非常重要的元素 a key element key 在这也是关键性的或者很重要的意思。那什么叫做哥德式的建筑呢？他后面继续告诉你，它是一种类似同位语，他说是个 highly ornate 非常华丽非常繁复的 ornate 就是通常讲装饰很华丽或者很繁复，它是一种非常繁复华丽的一种 style of architecture 一种建筑的风格。那这种建筑风格呢是在这个 popular 非常的受欢迎，从这个欧洲的中世纪盛期到中世纪晚期都非常盛行。那这个大概是从11世纪到15世纪。那这个 High Middle Ages 就中世纪的盛期一般是说大概差不多西元1000年到1250年左右，所以大概就11世纪开始。那这个中世纪晚期就是1250以后，那就是晚期。所以他这里讲说他最受欢迎的时代大概就是中世纪盛期到中世纪晚期，差不多就是11世纪到15世纪。
Now, during that era, most artistic expression was primarily reserved for religious artwork and buildings. So an artistic expression means any kind of work of art. And during that time, most artwork was done for religion, and especially the major ones. And the reason is everyone believed, first of all, but second of all, the people that were willing to pay for religious artwork were the religious centers. So if you were going to do art, then you were going to do religious art because that's where the money was. And of course, people who made stained glass and rose windows would be no exception. Of course, they're going to be doing their stained glass stuff for the churches. However, houses at this time also sometimes had stained glass because rich people could afford it. And as stained glass, as time went on, it became more and more affordable, and more houses would have stained glass in it.
好，所以呢，这个所谓的染色玻璃或者彩色玻璃呢，当时当然主要是宗教机构才有钱去这个采用。那有钱人家里也会有这个，那一般人呢，大概还是没有办法负担这个彩色玻璃。当然后来彩色玻璃越来越普遍了。所以我们再回来看这个句，他说在那个时期，这个 era 或者有人念 era， 它是 a period of time marked by distinctive character or event。这一段时期，这段时期呢有一些特色，或者是有一个很重要的事件，这个时候我们就用 era 或者 era 来形容这一段时期。所以在这段时期，就是刚刚讲的这种 rose window 盛行的时期呢，他说大多数的 artistic expression 就是艺术的表现，也就是艺术品啊 was primarily 主要是 reserved for 主要是保留给什么来用呢？保留给 religious artwork 宗教艺术。所以你做艺术大概就必须要，大概很多人就做宗教艺术，还有 artistic buildings 或者religious buildings 这个宗教的建筑。然后呢，接下来说 the rose window was no exception， 这句话大家都很熟，就是这个玫瑰窗也不是例外。
The ground plan of medieval European cathedrals is usually laid out in the shape of a cross, with rose windows often incorporated into the facades and transepts of the building. So the facade is like the end of a building. So usually that's facing the street if it's a regular building. But in this case, the facades are at the ends of each point of the cross. So there's at the very bottom of the cross on the long part, that's the entrance. So that's the entrance facade. But the ends of the other 3 points are also facades. The transept is the part that crosses the cross. So the short, little arms going out on either side is called the transept. And so usually on the end of each transept and then the end of the church away on the other side of the door, that's where the rose windows would be.
好，所以我们看到他说 the ground plan 就是这个平面图，在中世纪欧洲大教堂的平面图通常是怎么样呢？通常是 laid out 就是 spread out， 中世纪的大教堂通常都会这样延展开来 in the shape of a cross， 就以这个十字架的形状延展开来。那这个时候呢 with 什么什么后面加个分词，就是附随状况是有这个名词，那这个名词的状态是用分词来表达，所以附随状态在这里就是它是形状是十字架，然后呢它有这个玫瑰窗，那这些玫瑰窗的状态怎么样？通常会 incorporated into the facades， 就会纳入 incorporate 就是 to include as a part or member， 所以它会纳入在正面，会纳入这些玫瑰窗。那这个正面啊 facade 这里指的是这个各位可以想象一个十字架，那十字架每一个终端那都是一个正面，所以在这个正面就会有这种玫瑰窗。那还有呢 facades 还有 transepts 就是耳堂，耳堂是各位可以想象十字架最长的那个是直的，然后呢旁边两个比较短一点往左右延伸出去的那个就是耳堂，那个就是 transepts of the building。 好，所以大概这个位置是这样子。
Notre Dame has several rose windows facing north, south, and west. So north and south are the transepts, and west is the end of the main building. And the south window is the most famous, I think, because the light comes in most beautifully during the day, and measuring 13 meters in diameter. So this is a huge one.
所以巴黎这个圣母大教堂呢，它有几面玫瑰窗，它面临它这个窗户是面北、面南，还有面西。然后呢 with the south window， 所以它西边的南边的 south 的窗户呢 being 就是the most famous 最有名。所以这里同样这个句型我们有看到的 with 加一个名词再加一个分词修饰这个名词的状态，所以它是南边的那个窗户呢是最有名，而且呢它怎么样，它 measuring 又是一个分词，它量起来怎么样，就指它大小是13公尺，它直径13公尺，所以那一面大窗户它的直径有13公尺。
The windows are all illuminated by natural light throughout the day because the cathedral is outside and these are the windows to the outside. But they also cast colorful light onto the walls and floor of the cathedral, which is the whole point of stained glass. It's supposed to make the interior feel magical, which it does.
好，所以呢这些 windows 这些窗户呢 are all illuminated by 都是由什么来提供照明， illuminate 就是照明， to provide or brighten with light， 那但他们都是用 natural light， 都是用自然光来照明。那 throughout the day 整个白天都有自然光照着，那所以他们这个就够亮了。那同时分词修饰一下，他们会 casting 他们会投射 colorful light 投射五颜六色色彩缤纷的光线onto 投到哪里去呢 the walls 投射到这个墙壁上面，随着太阳的角度它会投射到墙壁上，那或者是投射到 floor 地板 of the cathedral 这个大教堂的地板或者墙面上面。
Despite their association with Gothic churches and Catholicism, historians believe that rose windows were inspired by early architectural styles from the Roman Empire and various Islamic empires that came afterwards. So even though when we think of rose windows now, we think of, Catholic churches and these Gothic churches, so they're associated with them because there's so many that are in Catholic churches. Historians also think that these were inspired by earlier architectural styles from the Roman Empire and Islamic empires. And this is highly likely because, first of all, people traveled and looked at what everyone else did. And second of all, this is true of architecture throughout the ages. Like there's so many things that are in our even modern buildings that come from, 2,000, 3,000 years earlier. Like we like to copy the style of earlier cultures because it sort of gives us the feeling of legitimacy. So it's, the Catholic churches are not different from this. Of course, they're going to borrow from the architecture that they see around them.
好，所以 despite 尽管他们跟什么的联系 their association with， 所以这些玫瑰窗呢，它尽管跟 Gothic churches 跟这个哥德式的教堂还有这个天主教都有关联，尽管如此，历史学家认为这个玫瑰窗呢 were inspired by 他们的灵感是来自于早期的建筑风格。从哪里来的建筑风格呢？早期来自于罗马帝国的建筑风格，还有早期来自于不同的 various 这个伊斯兰教的或者伊斯兰帝国，所以他们的灵感可能来自罗马帝国，来自于这个不同的伊斯兰帝国。那 that came afterward 这个修饰的是那个伊斯兰帝国，就先有罗马帝国，然后后面随之而来的伊斯兰帝国，那他们就从这些地方获取灵感。
Indeed, intricate window designs similar to rose windows appeared in the Middle East some 500 years before the construction of Notre Dame began. And actually, Notre Dame is not an early cathedral. It's one of the later ones that was built. So this is very true. But also, when I said that people traveled, we were doing the Crusades. The Europeans were basically going to the Middle East and invading them starting in 1096. So lots of Europeans had gone to invade the Middle East and Islamic countries for hundreds of years before the Gothic cathedrals started getting built. So they would have all seen this, and they would have known what they're like, and some people might have stayed around to study how they were built, and definitely the idea would come back with them. So it's very, very likely that these had Islamic origins.
所以他说的确 indeed intricate 就是错综复杂的这种 window designs 这些窗户的设计是 similar to rose windows 跟这个玫瑰窗很类似的这种窗户设计呢 appeared 出现在哪里呢？出现在中东的 Middle East 而且是大概在这个圣母院大教堂兴建前500年就已经出现了这种建筑了。那大家刚刚这个 Angela 讲那个时候还包括十字军东征啊等等的都让西方人看到了其他人建筑怎么做的。
And if you also consider that, the Middle East mathematics were far in advance of European mathematics at the time, it would make sense that something as mathematical as a rose window would have also come from the Middle East. Anyways, at the time, our article says, at the time, Islamic and Christian empires often fought each other. It's kind of an understatement. Europe went out of its way to invade the Middle East at least 10 times over the course of 300 years. So, yeah, they did fight each other a lot.
好，所以 at the time 就是在当时呢，这个伊斯兰帝国跟这个基督教帝国呢，他们常常会彼此征战 fought each other.
Nonetheless, the popularity of the rose window demonstrates that artistic expression can transcend time, culture, and religion. If something transcends its time, it means that even though it was born of a specific time, it can be cherished and loved by all cultures, all religions, and all times.
好，所以不管怎么说，玫瑰窗所受到的欢迎，它 demonstrates， 它显示了，它告诉我们什么呢？告诉我们 artistic expression 艺术的表现可以 transcend， 可以超越时间、文化跟宗教。
And so we have 4 questions for you about this article. Number 1 is, what was the main focus of art during the high to late Middle Ages?
好，所以问说，在中世纪盛期到晚期，艺术的主要焦点是什么？
The answer is C, creating pieces and architecture related to religion.
好，答案是 C, 创作与宗教相关的作品和建筑。
And number 2, according to the passage, if a photo of a typical medieval cathedral is being taken from high above, what shape will it look like?
根据文章，如果从高处拍摄一座典型中世纪大教堂的照片，它看起来是什么形状呢？
The answer is B. It will look like a cross shape if you look at it from above in the air.
好，答案是 B, 看起来会像是一个十字架。
And number 3, what can be inferred from the passage about rose windows?
好，根据文章可以推断出关于玫瑰窗的哪些讯息呢？
The answer is D. Despite existing during a time of conflict, their beauty transcended differences.
好，答案是 D. 尽管存在于一个充满冲突的时代，它们的美丽超越了差异。
And number 4, what aspect of rose windows is not discussed in the passage?
文章中没有讨论玫瑰窗的哪个面向呢？
The answer is A, the evolution of their symbolism. Although there is a lot of symbolism in the pictures in the rose window, we didn't talk about it in the article.
所以没有谈的是答案是 A, 它们象征意义的演变。
Okay, that's all we have for you today. If you're interested in architecture, you can't do wrong by looking into the cathedrals of medieval Europe because there's a lot of stuff to see. So, enjoy, and we'll see you next time for more Ivy English. Until then, bye-bye.